Morning, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the welcome. For those who don't know me, my name is Paul Wright, Managing Director of Appsflyer. And for those that don't know Appsflyer, quite simply, we're the leaders in mobile attribution and marketing analytics. Enough of the sales pitch. I wanted to talk to you today about the staggering rise of gaming app marketing. And I was thinking about this whilst putting together the presentation, and I thought to myself, January really is like my favorite time of the year. It's the year where you can look forward to all those exciting things to come, but more importantly, a time to look back, right? Look back at what's happened, what insights we can tease out, and how that can shape our strategy going forward. I think it's an obvious thing to say in a room full of gamers, but we are living in this age of gaming. But sometimes I feel we need to understand perspective. If mobile is on the rise right now, then gaming is absolutely booming, both in terms of the number of apps, the number of installs, the dominance in the charts, the number of people sat in this room. Every kind of metric kind of points in the right direction. This fantastic study by Nuzu really, for me, put things into perspective. You know, look at the number right in the middle, right? The bullseye. That's kind of what we're saying here, right? We're saying the gaming industry as a whole, 137 billion. And you know, we can see how that breaks down into PC, desktop, tablet, etc. But on the far right, it's this, which is really interesting to me, right? 70 billion from mobile, right? So for the first time, we're seeing mobile app being the majority stakeholder in this industry, right? And I think we need to understand why that is. So let's start. Let's dig into some of the data. Let's see what we uncovered, and hopefully I can share, and you can take this away and improve performance. In order to do so, we pulled together perhaps one of our biggest data studies to date. We had to tease out 1 billion paid installs. This was across 2,500 apps that were measuring app install purchases. Of course, hyper-casuals, all the buzz, so we also had to tease out all of those apps, in this case 1,100 of them, that were generating revenue from in-app ads. And in terms of the acquisition cost, we needed to understand and again retrieved a decent amount, 30 million in ad spend there across 1,200 apps. So pretty robust. The biggest data study that we've put together is certainly in gaming. What is it that's moving the needle and sort of underpinning all of this? Right? As a gamer, I'm more on this side. You know, that's probably an age thing, as well as a fat finger and sort of slow reaction kind of thing. But I think it's fair to say that the emergence of these cheap devices and more sort of CPU and powerful graphics engines and things like this, you know, the more immersive environments and more sort of strategic kind of gameplay that we can now put in place, you know, this is what's exciting, and it's amazing to see that sort of transition. But it's also placed what I feel is more of a demand on the model. And also, in order to scale, there's increasing complexities. I think, you know, we've all perhaps heard about this multiplier of a paid install can generate, you know, maybe 2.5 organic installs, right? And we used to use this as a mechanism to drive and build our audience. That's gone, right? Anyone who's getting that kind of multiplier right now is either very smart or very lucky, but in reality, what we're having to do now is dig deep to build our audience, spend to acquire, and it's a pay-to-play game. And in doing so, I think in order to still maintain and hit our ROI and LTV goals, we're seeing this sort of seemingly opposite directions occur, right? On the left, we have the sort of the hyper-casual gaming space, which for me is quite interesting, simply because I guess it's still one that isn't fully defined as such. I mean, we can talk about basic gameplay. We can talk about percentage of revenue generated from in-app ads, these kind of things. But I think we can all see it's a more sort of simpler experience versus the more advanced, strategic, in-depth, immersive environment that we also have come to love and know. Digging a little bit deeper then into the data, into the rise of hyper-casual, looking back at the growth for Q2, Q3 last year, you can see very, very clearly, right? This is surging right now. You know, we're seeing around about 300% growth in just that one quarter alone, right? It's dwarfing the growth of any category. right? So we can understand why there's so much hype and buzz about this. If it's not clear already, a few examples: Hello Stars, Ball Blast, Bumper.io. These all for us, I think, we can sort of congratulate as having a great and successful 2018. Of course, I don't mean to leave anybody out. There are many, many others in this category. But I think it's also worth, again, looking back at this perspective, right? It's big on growth, but what does the market share look like? And not just here locally, here in the UK or in Europe, but globally, right? When we start to look at and feed in China data from China, from India, from LATAM, we actually see in our data set, it only accounts for about 6%. It's actually the mid-core and strategy that you can see here at 52%, which is the largest and more dominating category here. In terms of non-organic paid installs, right? Not only that, but it's a growing category as well. And it's growing in expense of the casual kind of space. Food for thought. So what else did we uncover in the data? A very interesting trend. I mean, again, it could be an obvious one at a high level, but what we're seeing is more and more Western companies going east. Of course, places like China are very attractive, huge markets, but they're not without their complexities. There's a massive hurdle when it comes to localization. It's a somewhat confusing landscape for a lot of people to get involved in. There's numerous app stores that you may not have come across, local media players. The challenges and the barrier to entries can be high. So let's dig down a little bit further again. So we took all of the Western apps, or to put it another way, we excluded apps with a HQ in East, right? So we're totally ring fencing now those sort of Western apps and looking at their traffic in the Eastern markets. And we saw that 36% launched their first title, their first campaign, and started running activity in these markets. Another 31% who were already up and running increased their traffic. So overwhelmingly, more than 2/3 here are increasing their activity in region, and I guess those 33% are those that are feeling the pain and the difficulties that I explained previously. Looking again a little bit further and starting to understand the non-organic, so the paid installs in that market, we saw an 80% growth. But where is that growth? What's underpinning that growth? And it's clear that the data speaks to the casual gaming. And when we speak to our customers and say, why is this? Why is it that casual succeed in the market? And again, it comes down to that ease of localization. It doesn't take a genius to realize if you have an incredibly complex game, lots of, not talking about language obviously, but the experience itself, the nuances that come with localization, it can be a challenge. So a simple game, easy to take to another market. Sadly, in amongst all of this data that we're uncovering, we also uncovered some bad news, right? It's getting super expensive out there. There's a low percentage of users that actually go on to make in-app purchases, and the retention rates are a pain point, right? And they can be quite poor. So let's jump into some of these. The cost per install, I've tried to break it down by category: casino, mid-core, casual, hyper, and then by country. Right? I don't think there's any surprises when we dug up the fact that casino is more expensive. $2, 55 cents on the other end of the scale for hyper casual. And I've heard just today, actually through a number of conversations, a common strategy around launching in emerging markets. So you'll see the likes of Brazil, Indonesia with sort of low CPI costs, right? For a lot of people. And also on Android, where cost per installs are often much lower. And we see this price difference with iOS, right? It was $2 for casino, and now we're at $4.59, right? So you see the immediate uplift. That's a significant price hike. And 55 cents on hyper, going up to $1.05. Again, you see these emerging markets. I think the way I would take this data and try and interpret it is where the gaps between iOS and Android in the same market aren't as steep, there's an opportunity there. It's not double your money now. It's actually not a dissimilar cost in some markets. For some people, just finding revenue-generating users alone remains elusive. And just to be clear what we're looking at here, right? So I'm going to break it down again by mid-core, hyper, and a few other categories. What we're seeing is, what is the percentage of people that go on to convert in that first 90-day period, right? So you've paid to acquire them. Do they go on to make an in-app purchase? And you'll see the average conversion rate here for Japan, Australia, and the UK, right? You know, we're at sort of 3.5% is an average, okay? What's also super interesting to me is this blue sort of data, right? So we took the top 10%, those country leaders and category leaders, and looked at their conversion rate, right? So if I'm in Japan and I'm seeing that my conversion rate should be around 3.5, actually I know what's obtainable, right? I know that I can get somewhere near 10% if I'm like a leader. And what's staggering is the delta in markets like China, right? Where the average conversion rate is, you know, around about sort of 2 to 3%, but actually I can get almost near 15% if I can compete with the top guys. Similar sort of thing with casual. The top 3 don't change too much, right? We've got Australia in there again. We've got Japan in there. This time, Germany's jumped in the position of UK, if I remember correctly. And again, you know, you can see these sort of big gaps in competition. You know, China again. You know, you gotta be really winning to get that conversion rate up high. In this is casual, and then casino. I guess this also kind of suggests that everyone in Australia, UK, and Japan likes to gamble. Maybe that's true. But also at the lower end, right? You know, I mentioned some of these emerging markets like Indo and Brazil. Actually, you know, if you're looking to test and launch, you may not see the results that you want in this kind of vertical because these people are less inclined to be spending and converting into in-app purchases. So it may not extrapolate the way you'd hope it would. Another solution to try and generate more money if you're struggling to convert these people into in-app purchases is to change your revenue stream entirely. And as drastic as that sounds, the data again kind of teased out some examples of this. If we look at casual and we looked at the monetization strategies across the year, it's very clear that in June, you know, we saw sort of 30% of people monetizing by in-app ads, but the vast majority are running with in-app purchases. Yet 6 months later, it's almost flipped on its head, right? The majority of people now in casual are monetizing through in-app ads. For mid-core and strategy, I mean, that looks pretty rock solid, right? Nice and consistent. I mean, you may interpret this as a slight trend going on, but in comparison, very stable and clearly and overwhelmingly, it's in-app purchases. And again, perhaps we can take from this that the environment, the gameplay itself lends itself to a certain type of monetization. Retention, super tricky. We know it's a pain for a lot of people. Okay, when I see charts like this, it scares the life out of me to be in a situation where you know, after one day you've got 27% of your users left, and then 30 days only 4.6. Yeah, that's pretty alarming. But I will take some positives from this data, right? Because what I see is marketers doing a fantastic job at optimization here, right? I see a 30-day 4.6, and then as the years go by, creeping up to 5.5. And again, if we look at day 7 or day 1, right, across the years, you see those positive shifts occurring. So though it's a challenge, I want to flip it on its head a little bit and speak more positively and say we're getting better. And there is more good news. I truly believe that gaming app marketers, you know, are setting the standards really and growing. When we look at another KPI, average revenue per user, it's almost exclusively gaming, right? Social, casino, casual games, mid-core strategy, year on year, are increasing the amount of revenue that you can generate from your users. At the bottom of the class, you know, we have food and drink, shopping, social. These guys are literally going backwards. They're making less money year on year from the existing user base. And when it comes to fraud, gaming's at the bottom, right? I'm not saying it's not an issue. What I'm saying is, out of all the verticals, gamers are quite literally killing fraud, right? You guys are doing an awesome job at not only identifying it, addressing it, using the right tools to block it, prevent it, and weed out all these statistical anomalies. And you can see how, certainly, in that sort of July period, when there was a huge surge in bots and spoofing activity and things like this, again, the spike there for gaming wasn't as prominent as all these other verticals. So continue to do the great work is kind of the message here. That flavor of some of the stats that we pulled out. Obviously, go and download it. It's free. There's a lot more that you can digest and take back to the business. The question I have is, are you really ready to level up in the mobile age of gaming? And one other thing that I kind of wanted to leave you with, and we put this together partly for Pocket Gamer, but also as part of our educational series. There's been a lot of talk today and yesterday around the difficulties and challenging around soft launching, and we've got a great sort of whiteboard here, sharing knowledge, giving back to the community, and hopefully that will help as well. Let's do it. Thank you very much.